Thank you. Any declarations of interest from any members on any item of tonight's agenda? Councillor Milford. Steve, sorry.
I'm, as you know, quite heavily involved with Baby Box and Ventnor Food Bank. So any items relating to funding for them, I have an interest in. And also, I've recently taken up the rent of an allotment. So that is a payment to the town council as well. So those issues I have an interest in.
Thank you, Councillor Milford. Any more? Thank you very much. Item number 3, minutes of previous meetings. Town Council meeting of the 11th of January 2021. I know that Morgan has physically taken all the papers to Council, so I'm assuming that you've all been in receipt of them and read them. So can we take the minutes as read, please? Could I have a seconder? Councillor Cockett, thank you. Nobody being against that, we take that as unanimous, Clerk. And noted the Planning Committee meeting of the 12th of January 2021 for information only. Item number 4, the finance report, and the Clerk, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The usual finance report, no surprises here, I think. The balance, the 31st of January on the Town Council's funds was £221,007. The bank accounts have been reconciled up to that date, and that process has been completed. The list of payments made during January came to a total of 39,364, of which 10,332 was attributable to the Salisbury Gardens account. The full list is attached to the members' report as usual. Receipts during January totaled £5,029, of which 3,458 was the total of rents received during that period. Also attached as usual, the year-to-date variances, which are looking very odd this year, and I've made a note that well, I haven't made a note actually, but the variances are primarily due to the impacts of COVID. So the list of payments and receipts is there, with payments 62,747 less than budget, and receipts over the month £8,472, also less than budget. That's the report for January, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clark. Any questions or observations and or amendments for consideration for the, oh sorry, I beg your pardon, I'm ahead of myself now. Any questions on the financial report?
Yes, when do we start paying the business rates on the toilets? Is that very close?
The legislation is still waiting to be signed off by Parliament. It should be still backdated to the 1st of April 2020, but who knows? So we've no more information than that, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sugut. Are you satisfied with that reply?
Sorry, I missed that.
No, I'm asking Councillor Toogood if you reply satisfied.
Yes, I am. I like the idea of it backdated too. It's quite encouraging, isn't it? Yes, I am.
Yeah, if it happens, thank you. Thank you. Any other members on the financial report?
No.
Thank you. Could I have a proposal, please?
I'll propose that if you like, Chair.
Councillor Toogood, seconded by Councillor Lucas. Thank you very much. Back to you, Clark, for the management of financial risk, item number 5.
Yes, Chair, this is an annual event which most of you will remember, that you are required to consider and approve, if you're content with it, the arrangement that we as a staff team have in place to any element of financial risk. The schedule is the same as in previous years that's attached to the report, as we've not yet come across any reason to amend it. But it's for the meeting to consider. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any comments or amendments to the financial risk report? Okay.
No.
I have a proposal, please. Councillor Logan, seconder. Seconder, please. Councillor Cockett, thank you very much indeed. Okay, to item number 6, the budget and precept for 2021. You have the report in front of you. Council has discussed the budget in its informal meeting about a week ago, and this report is as a result of that meeting. And if I could just summarise that the draft budget anticipates a total expenditure during 21/22 of £488,182, and income from activities totaling £128,793 reduces the amount needed from the precept to £359,389, compared with £369,439 for the current year, a reduction of £10,550 or 2.7% on the precept. The recommendation is that the Town Council is recommended to adopt the draft budget as presented, confirm its precept-related budget for 2021/22 to be £359,389, and to authorise the clerk to inform the Isle of Wight Council accordingly. Members, any comment? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Line 44, family voice, was agreed, I think, 2 years ago to the day, pretty much, as a one-off project costing £3,000. And we have it in this year's budget, and we have the predicted outturn showing that the budget is expected to be spent this year. As far as next year's budget is concerned, a change has been made since we discussed it in draft. That's been added, £3,000 for next year, which is, if we are spending the money in the current year, it was agreed as a one-off project, so I'm not quite sure why that's been added in for next year.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. If I can respond, that's an error on my part, for which I apologise, and I will take it out and adjust the sums accordingly. You're quite right, the money will be spent in this year.
So have I just saved £3,000 then? That's very good.
That is true.
Because the point I was going to go on to make, which I mean, hopefully that helps with, is when we discussed this in draft, we were looking at a reduction in the actual council tax, if we could achieve one. And of course, what's happened on the figures at the bottom is that although we have saved expenditure compared with this year, the council tax base has gone down by somewhere between 2 and 3%, nearly 3%. And therefore, the actual effect on the council tax is pretty minimal. I think it's 0.1% reduction, which I mean is 16p a year per house is nothing, isn't it? So we've lost the reduction in council tax that we were after because the council tax base has gone down. I don't know whether we have any feel for why the council tax base has gone down, because 2.5% in 1 year seems quite a lot.
On that point, Councillor, I mean, the overall, there is a reduction in the precept total. The Band D calculation, as you rightly say, produces a different result. Councillor Cockett questioned the tax base, and I sent him a copy of the letter that we received from the Isle of Wight Council. So I consider Councillor Cockett an expert, and he might like to explain.
Take the thistle by Steve.
But
Councillor Crockett.
to give the exact words I think I gave you, David, I understand the individual words, but not the combination in which they were used. There's quite a jargon thick explanation, and it's to do with the council tax relief rates, isn't it? And the change in those. But it's a very dramatic change. I mean, 70 households. So to be honest, I did not understand the explanation, but it does exist in black and white.
Councillor Bond might know how the calculation is done, but I really never have understood it.
I mean, I have to say I was responsible for it in the previous council, but from the other end, and I'm not, which was we didn't have parishes, so I'm not really fully understanding what they've done. If that's what it is, I mean, we're not thinking it's a change in population or deaths recently in empty houses being exempt for 6 months or more single people or anything like that. Then
no. It's a technical calculation, and as Councillor Cockett said, one of the influences is the reduction in the council tax they expect to collect, not least because they are reducing the amount payable to.
Okay, yeah. So they've made an assumption on the collection rate, which I know again from past experience, you only have to move that a smidgen, and it has quite a big effect on the budget. The £3,000 that I found hopefully helps make the 16p something a little bit more meaningful, because I'm not sure what you can buy with 16p, and certainly can't buy a postage stamp nowadays. The only other query I was going to raise, and it was because I was hoping we could make the figure a little bit more useful, on the number 31 bus, which we've agreed to carry so far on just to the end of this financial year. The budget is simply carrying the figures forward into next year, isn't it? And so we're projecting an income of just over 3,000 and a cost of just over 9,000, and we're budgeting to cover the difference, which is just over 6,000 ourselves for the whole year. Now, my recollection of the mood of the last meeting was, although we did agree to carry it on to the end of this year, I didn't really pick up that members were really wanting to carry it on indefinitely if it was costing 3 times as much as it was earning. And I just wonder whether, if we were looking for a more a budget that delivers what we hoped it would deliver when we discussed it informally, whether we could make a more reasonable assumption for the bus, and then either the bus improves or we stop it during the year.
If I can respond to that, Chair.
Sure, of course.
There are some discussions, not just within the Assets and Services Group, Councillor, I have to assure you, outside of it as well. We're having some discussions with Fitbus, who, as you may know, run a very successful service in the west of the island, and there is, I understand from the St Lawrence councillors, still a significant interest in boarding on demand for a service of some nature. So I think it's prudent to keep some amount in the budget to allow those discussions to progress.
Well, I have to say, Clark, if we're discussing something with an outside party, I would have expected a discussion at council with the public able to contribute, and so everything is open and transparent. I'm surprised to find that the council is already engaged in third-party discussions on something that we've never discussed as a council.
The council isn't. The officers are, and it's no more than discussions. Nothing may come out of it, but we're talking about, obviously, about the budget for the whole of next year, and taking it out would involve cancelling the service at the 31st of March.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting taking it out, Chair. I was just flagging that we're budgeting for a £6,000 loss for the whole year, and I'm not sure whether we, if we're still running at a £6,000 loss in 6 months' time, surely we're going to look at it again.
Yeah, we are. Just if I can interject here, Councillor Bond, we have. I mean, we've spoken about this particular problem at length, and as far as talking with the third parties, I think that's perfectly in order. In fact, I've asked officers to to look at the implications of running the service ourselves as a town council. It's not something that I feel until I'm confident that I have an argument to bring forward that I would bring to the town council, but I've certainly asked officers to have a look at it, and I think that's a perfectly normal practice and perfectly good use of their skills and workload. So just by way of illustration, so the talks with the VITBAS are exactly that. They're just exploratory talks before they're brought back to council, which if we feel there is something to be gained from it, then we certainly will do, but certainly no decision will be made with those parameters. Thank you. Anything else on the budget? Oh, sorry, on the precept. So could I have a proposer, please, that we, as I envisaged for paragraph 4 in the recommendation.
I propose that. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Sorry, Councillor Cockett, seconded by Councillor Toogood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, Ventnor Park. Based on our little agenda, and as you all know, the lease has now been signed. Well, I've certainly signed my part of the lease, which means we now control the management of Ventnor Park. And there are various ideas afoot about how we can best manage Ventnor Park on behalf of our residents and constituencies. And the recommendation is for the Town Council to hold a virtual informal session for all members interested in the park's development and the relevant officers at 6 p.m. on Monday, the 15th of February, or such other time as members may agree. So basically, that's exactly what it says in the tin. I certainly know from my informal discussions with some of you that many of you have very, very good ideas about how we should take forward the management of the park, and this will be the ideal situation for us all to get together and have a little brainstorming session about how we take things forward. What we have got to do is provide a basis and a principle and a policy for the management of the park going forward, because I think you will all agree that it's not only a jewel in the crown of Ventnor, it's a jewel in the crown of the whole island. So, members, with that in mind, does anybody wish to say anything? No. So does anybody have any objections to the date of the 15th of February for a virtual meeting? And obviously, as many of you as feel the necessity are more than welcome to attend. No doubt Morgan will provide the link as normal. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, can I just say something?
You
I've
can,
had an email from Matt Chatfield today. We all know, a lot of you know Matt Chatfield, and he is now the president of the Isle of Wight Natural History and Archaeology Society, but of course he does lots of other things. And he's very excited about Park, and he's got some very good, interesting things to suggest. And I was going to say, would you mind if Matt Chatfield was invited to that meeting? He would like to come, and he'd probably have a lot to offer us. Yeah? What's that noise?
You're talking about coming to the informal meeting on the 15th, Gillian?
Yeah,
Sorry,
would that be possible? He's, you know, he's someone that would be very valuable to us.
I don't see that. I don't see that it's not possible unless anybody has any great.
No, well, he's asked me if it's possible to come because he's got a very, very brilliant idea about having an environmental weekend, which would be marvellous, wouldn't it? Yes, but he's in a position to organise that.
Sure. Well, we do have the prerogative of inviting outside personnel, outside bodies to our discussions, although they don't know. Do any members have any objections to that?
No, none at all. No.
Councillor Macaulay?
Okay.
No objection, Chair. Just thinking that if we do that, perhaps we should invite anybody else who's got an interest that we've talked to.
Yeah, good idea, really, isn't it? Because there are lots of people who really, on the Isle of Wight, are really good at organising things, and they're the kind of people we we need to get our, work with, don't we? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Backhouse. Right, Councillor Watling.
Where is
Sorry,
he?
Delia, I completely agree with you and Jamie. It goes a little bit back to what Ian was saying about the buses, is that we sort of need to get our policy in place, whether it's privately sector run or publicly sector run, or whether we're selling concessions or whether we're employing people to run it. And then we can start bringing in people who might want to run events or do things in the park. So I think there's a cart and horse argument. There's no reason why we couldn't bring everybody in who might want to get involved commercially or non-commercially, but we need to say right at the beginning, we haven't decided how we're going to do this, and we're not at a place where we can start taking pitches and suggestions for commercial activity just yet. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, but he's not a commercial person.
Okay.
He's just
But
someone who has
other
emailed
activity
me.
might want to come in, might well be. So that's the balance. I think policy then third parties.
I have forwarded his email to David, so he can read it or talk to him. Yeah.
No, well, I think it'd be a valuable addition to the mix, Councillor Backhouse Friday and Councillor Watling. I think that'd be a very good idea. So the parts are listening. So Alison, I expect that's going to be.
Yes, I'll arrange that, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I was giving that to Alison, David. But if you are the clerk after all, so we give you your place. That's absolutely fine. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we come to the grounds maintenance agreement, but this is something which is really above my pay grade or below my pay grade, whichever way you want to put it. But it's something that I rather talk about verbose documents. I think this is one of them. And I know that councillors Toogood and Lucas have been looking at this in the background. Clark, would you like to, by way of introduction, take us through this?
We'll do some.
Sorry, Brian.
On, David.
No, David, if you just, by way of introduction, and then Councillor Lucas and Councillor Toogood.
Briefly, Chair, from my perspective, there's no issue with this. We've been doing it for the last 5 years. The agreement run out and renewal. But it does need checking through to make sure there aren't things being added to it that we're uncomfortable with, and that's where Councillor Lucas comes in. Thank you, Councillor Lucas.
Yes, I mean, as you said, we've been doing this for the last few years and everybody seems to be happy with the standard, and the relationship between us and the Isle of Wight Council seemed to be satisfactory. But when we saw this partnership agreement, they had added in their trees. Now, that always worries me because trees are lovely things, but they're not expensive to actually look after and even plant, and that's what they have slipped that into the partnership agreement. There's also structures. We always said that we would avoid any expense to do with drains or walls or retaining walls or anything like this. We just look after the green bits, and they have slipped that in. So I'd hopefully David will go back to them and say, remind them that that wasn't part of the agreement. And if they want a partnership, that's their ideal bit that they can take in the partnership, is looking after the trees and structures. Otherwise, it's a bit of a one-sided partnership.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lucas. Anybody else? Jim, have you got anything to add to this, Councillor Toogood?
I just like the clause, which should please Brian, on page 4, 10, in a sarcastic, 10/1. I thought I'd please you, Mr. Lucas. You look at it. Have you looked at it?
So I read that, Jim, for everybody's. The clause Jim just mentioned, both parties shall ensure that they perform the respective obligations under this agreement in accordance with all applicable equality law, whether etc., 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 and the authorities' equality and diversity policy. It's a compliance issue.
That's good. Yeah, thank you. That covers your point, Brian, the other day, didn't it? Can't hear. No.
It was a catch-all, I think. I think they've done it for all the councils. It's probably a standard one, and that's why there's livestock and everything in there, which I'm assuming didn't apply to us.
Yeah, it's cut and pasted, so it's a bit lazy actually, but it's probably just the way that we do these things, and you're probably correct that it's probably the same document with every other council. So, Councillor Lucas, would your proviso be that we accept this with the exclusion of the trees?
Yes, with that proviso, yes, it seems okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I mean, the document looked fine to me. I rather suspect, given the amount of effort they've been making recently to inspect the trees and make sure they've done all the work they think needs doing before they hand them over, that they're confidently expecting us to take responsibility for the trees, because they have been doing an awful lot of work on the trees recently, and I suspect that's connected with this contract. Otherwise, the actual agreement looks fine. The recommendation doesn't look fine because it's not legal as it's written at the moment. You can't give a working group with no decision-making authority the ability to negotiate an agreement on behalf of the council.
Where does it say anything about working group agreeing to it?
I should have added what I usually do in these circumstances, which was to delegate it to the clerk, advised by the Assets and Services Working Group. And I'm happy to amend it accordingly, obviously.
Yeah, there's no great rush here, is there, Clark?
No, it's just a further illustration of how the council just assumes that things can be dealt with by a subset of members meeting in private, which I object to every time I see it.
Yeah, and that's a whole new argument, Councillor Bond, which you're perfectly capable of bringing up at some other time, but not in the middle of this discussion, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm sorry, Chair. The recommendation isn't legal and needs to be amended.
No, sorry, please, Councillor Bond, please. I'm the chair. What you're saying is something that you've reiterated on several occasions, and I'm not letting it pass without comment here. And that is that it's your opinion, and as far as I can see, yours alone, that the Assets and Services Working Group make decisions on behalf of this council, which is patently not true. Now, if you think that, as I said to you before, in correspondence, the remedy is in your hands, and I'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you. Right.
I will make the amendment as suggested.
Well, the amendment's what I'm asking for, Chair, so I'm glad the clerk is in agreement, even if the Chair has some difficulty.
The Chair has no difficulty whatsoever. The clerk.
Oh, I'm fine.
Just repeat the amendment, please, David.
The Town Council is recommended to accept this new partnership agreement, subject to any amendments the clerk, advised by the Assets and Services Working Group, may negotiate about particular areas.
Thank you very much. Councillor Watling.
Can I just check my understanding there? So what we're proposing is that we take on the park from the Isle of Wight Council and we pay for everything in the park, but we don't pay for the trees maintenance. Is that our proposal?
If I may, Chair, respond to that. Thanks, Councillor Watling. The park is under a different arrangement, as you know, and with the park, we are responsible for trees. With the partnership agreement for grounds maintenance, as Councillor Lucas said, we have never been responsible for trees or structures, and we've always been clear about that. The contract, as the Town Council understands it, is essentially for grass cutting, and that's the essence of our contract with John O'Connor Limited.
Okay, so any tree maintenance will be the responsibility of the Isle of Wight Council, even though they've signed the lease over to us.
We're not talking about the park, Councillor Watling. We're talking about the other pieces of green land. And most of these trees would be bordering the highway in any case. which would be Alan Rose's responsibility.
Right, so in the park
What they're
itself,
trying to do is work a flanker and get us to take that responsibility away from them.
I'm just trying to understand the basis of the negotiation here. So we're but in the park, we'll take on the responsibility for the trees maintenance.
That's
We already
correct.
have been signing the
Okay,
lease.
fine. Just didn't understand that properly. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. So subject to that, the aforesaid amendment, David, I think we're all clear now.
Chair, if I may.
Need a
Councillor Cockett.
So as it stands with the issues that Brian's raised about the trees and the structures, we can't actually vote on this or proceed until that's resolved, can we? Because I mean, they are significant issues. So does that mean this will come back, this paper will come back to this meeting, hopefully with an amended schedule?
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't clear, but that's what I was alluding to when I said that there's no hurry for this to go through, Stephen. So I think you're absolutely right. And as I say, and I'm trying to explain to Councillor Watling, I think this is just something that was added. It's never been before in any agreement that we've had over the. Yeah, please. This is one of these things that that has come down to us as a result of the cuts from central government to the Isle of Wight Council, because they used to control it before. Okay, let's move on to the central car park.
Yes,
You've read the background with the update and the correspondence with Chris Ashman, and the recommendation is that the Town Council is recommended to accept the match funding offer of £1,000 from the Isle of Wight Council.
I have nothing to add, Chair. Thank you. Good summary.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody's aware of this. We have discussed this and approved it before, that we would match Isle of Wight Council, or we would ask them to match the £1,000 funding to take this study forward. Can I have a proposal? Sorry, Councillor Cockett.
Yeah, I proposed it last time, so I'll propose it again.
Thank you. And the seconder? Councillor Milford. Thank you very much. Okay, new public toilet. Let me just get my. All right, this has been the subject of some contentiousness over the last, goodness, many weeks now. Sorry, just check out. Yeah, I'm not muted. There is a new paper here with recommendation. I'm not going to rehearse what's written here, because I think with all the correspondence we've had over the past weeks, most councillors, or certainly most councillors, will have been aware of it. But the recommendation is that, subject to the Isle of Wight Council agreeing to a charge of £1,000 or less a year for the hire of the car parking base in the central car park required for the new public toilet, and the receipt of borrowing approval, the Town Council would recommend to contract with its preferred contractor, DN Associates Limited, for the construction of the new public toilets. Before I move to the full council, this, I'm going to propose this, and I'm looking for a seconder, please. Councillor Lucas. Thank you. Members.
No, and I'll second it.
No, sorry, Councillor Toogood. Councillor Lucas seconded it.
Beg your pardon, sorry. Thank you.
No, it's all right. No problem at all. not a problem. Okay, councillors. I'm having my coffee delivered. Councillor Watling.
Morgan, could I have the screen, please? Would that be all right?
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I was concentrating on my coffee. Councillor Watling asked for what, sorry?
Can I have the screen? Can I share the screen, please?
For what purpose?
Let's show a few PowerPoint slides. Is that okay?
Well, it depends whether they're relevant, and we don't know that until we have.
Quick, right, straightforward question, Stuart. Will you allow me to show some slides for the meeting, or will you not allow me to do so?
Well,
easy yes or no.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying I'm not prepared to do it. I just would like to know what the background to this is.
Well, the background is the paper that we're considering now.
Well, it doesn't really tell me anything.
Okay, well, if you won't let me show them, I'll just read them to you. Is that okay? I can just read them?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Well, Chair, just to make the point, if we were meeting in a room, which is a normal arrangement under the law and under our standing orders, a member would be able to hand something round. And indeed, in previous meetings, I mean, Stephen handed something round at a previous meeting, and the members are entitled to hand something round about the agenda without the chair reading it first to see whether it's acceptable. And that happened. I think Stephen will remember that he handed something around. I think it was probably about the buses, I remember. And we've had his hand out on the town centre as well. So I'm not sure why, just because we're in a virtual meeting, you're preventing us from seeing what Colm would hand around physically if we're in a proper meeting.
Well, it's nothing to do with being in a virtual meeting. It's all to do with protocol and the fact that this has been on the agenda since the agenda was distributed, and Councillor Watson has had ample opportunities to circulate to members anything that he wishes members to take note of. That is the context that I'm talking in, Councillor Bond, no other context at all. What worries me is that we know that Councillor Watson's agenda, and I paraphrase here, is, and I don't want I don't want us to be waylaid in that respect. It's got nothing whatever to do with the fact that other meetings and the comparison to the 31 buses, neither here nor there. That was not a contentious issue at the time.
So I'm just struggling. So I can read some stuff out, but in 2021 on a virtual meeting, I can't share the screen and show some PowerPoint slides. That's your ruling.
It's not my ruling. I was asking for an explanation which I haven't been given yet. That it wasn't my ruling.
The explanation.
I asked for an explanation. The explanation was there was no attempt to give the background or the context of the slides that you were about to produce for members. Hang on, Colm. If there are no further objections from members, and if there is, raise your hands now. I will allow you to show the slides.
Thank you. Anyone else objecting?
Okay, Morgan, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right, okay, so there we go. Share. There we go. Everyone can see those. See that okay, yeah? So this will not take long with a bit of luck. I can operate the screen properly. There we go. So, maximize that. Got stuff all over my screen here. Here we go. Fine. Okay. I'd just like to say that a few things I think have been lost in translation. I'm not against the council building a toilet block. I'm not against the toilet block as it's drawn and specified. I really quite like it. I am not against the location specified. Okay, so I'm not trying to stop what we're doing now in any way, shape or form. What I do think could happen is the procurement process should be improved. So why retender? What's the advantage? Well, I think we might save the taxpayer a bit of money. I think we can evaluate factors like running costs, the environment and the effects on local jobs more than we have done already. I think that the IWC, Councillor Peace, certainly has said that he's not wonderfully pleased. He's put that in writing. So I think we would engage with IWC on a much more positive basis, which is not a bad place to be when you're negotiating the price of the parking spaces. There's no possible future downstream challenge. If we retendered it, it's done, it goes away. There is no possible way of coming back to say that this wasn't done correctly. And then the issue just goes away. It goes away for this council, it goes away for future councils, it goes away for future officers and future members of the council. Will it delay the start of the building? Well, I don't believe it will, because the specs, very good specs, are already written. We can put an ad on Contracts Finder really, really quickly. We can advertise it for a couple of weeks in parallel with the PWLB, the Public Works Loan Board application, and evaluating tenders and publishing the results could be done within a week. So I don't think it adds much more delay than we've already seen. There's an interesting local parallel. I don't know if members are aware. Sandown Town Council is also having new public toilets, and it's using similar processes to the ones I've always advocated and the ones that indeed form our current standing orders. This is the process that Sandown went through internally before they got to the idea of expressing, getting expressions of interest via contracts finder and indeed local press, which is quite a good one. And there's my next slide. There we go. So there's the actual advert on the right hand side of the screen. So they published it on Contracts Finder for what's that? That's 18 days. So just under 2.5 weeks. Okay. So everybody could see that. And so my question there is, why did they do that? I don't understand how they came to a different conclusion to us. Equally, I've got a problem with this key on my keyboard. Come on. Equally, if I look on Contracts Finder just the other day, there are 24 other parish and town councils invitations to tender currently on Contracts Finder. I don't know how big your screens are, whether you can read some of that, but some of them are interesting. They're grounds maintenance, they're project management, they're solar panels, they're community hub extension. There are all kinds of building projects on there, advertised on Contracts Finder. So again, interesting. Other parish councils have chosen to do that. As you know, there's been a fair bit of Facebook and other social media things there, and Gary Peace got involved in that in his position as a councillor. And there's been, we can argue this backwards and forwards, but there are plenty of comments out there, and that 86 number of people that have signed a petition is a little bit bigger now. Obviously, we couldn't walk up and down the high street and put things in the post office because of COVID, so we could only do it over the internet. So 86 out of 3,000 isn't very big, but then you haven't got 86 people supporting the current process. You've only got 86 people against it. So that would be an interesting thing. So in summary, and this is the very last slide, we might see cost reductions. Any delays will be minor. We can work positively with the Isle of Wight Council to get a result for Ventnor. No further downstream issues will arise on procurement, and we can just do what all the other councils on the Isle of Wight are doing, or other parish councils. End of presentation. Thank you for letting me share the slides. You can have the screen back, Morgan.
Thanks, Councillor. Before I move, hang on, Councillor Tudor, before we move on, just when it comes to figures are fine and dandy, but 86 is absolutely meaningless. The opposite side to that argument is that 5,914 people agree with what the town council is doing. They just haven't bothered to write and tell us or phone us about it. I mean, that's fine. But sorry, so before I bring you in, I'll bring Councillor Logan in because he had his hand up first.
Yeah, I mean, I have been following this with some interest, and I must admit it's been one of the more disappointing aspects of my time at Ventnor Town Council because the way of this has gone about. I do not see. I believe we followed due process. I believe that maybe that process was followed, but the actual campaign to undermine the credibility of the town council does not stand anybody any good, and to cast aspersions on some very upstanding people who have done a lot of work for this council for absolutely no financial reward, in words in very informal terms, is completely out of order. However, the one thing I want to really pick up on is this statement from Colin Watman, as if we retender that the problem all goes away. I do not believe that to be true. I believe that if we go to a retender process after we had a tendering process, we're opening a can of worms. Because how can we have a blind retendering process when the figures that won the tender in the first place are known? We are actually acting people to tender against a known bar with it, and not all people bidding will have access to them. But the fact is that some of them could is opening us up to far more serious accusations of impropriety than where we are at the moment. So I would say that we are going to go down a very, very dangerous path if we decide to retender.
Thank you. But that's not what we're asking the vote to be about tonight. A retendering process, as the recommendation states, which I'll read again at the end. Councillor Logan. Councillor Toogood.
Well, unfortunately, like a lot of stuff the councillor has put out, he's incorrect, because the specifications where we based the provisional cost on for the nominated contractor was drawn up by A, the electrician, B, the plumber. So no one's got those specifications apart from myself. And if Councillor Watley thinks I'm going to give them to him to go and get a competitive price for it, that's not going to happen. We're going to have to employ some specialists to bring this work in, the new specifications, etc. Anything up, the information I've got, we're looking anything between £7,000 and £10,000. Bring specialist consultants in to start all over again, because the whole project would have to start again before you put it together. Now, if Councillor Watley wants to do it, he's got to do it by himself, because he's certainly not going to get help out of me for it. It's just I put 100 hours on this project, and I've saved £25,600 dealing with different contractors and different main suppliers, and I think that's pretty good. So what he thinks that the specifications are done, they're not. You have to bring a consultant in. So I don't know where he's going to start with it, but certainly not that my help.
It's a bit of a red herring, Councillor Toogood, talking about specifications in any case, because we don't have anything else to consider apart from the recommendation, which is not about the specifications. Councillor Macaulay.
Just a clarification, if you would, Chair. Does that mean that the work carried out by Jim to create these specifications that he's not prepared to release, was it agreed that that work would be owned by him and not the council?
The specifications have been released. The specifications were circulated to all members.
In that case, what did Jim mean when he said that he wouldn't release?
So he seemed to think, and I'm not speaking for himself. He can speak for himself, but what I'm guessing is that he's saying that it would be improper for specifications to be released to another party in consideration of their bid. Am I correct, Councillor Toogood?
No, in a way, you are, Chair. The detailed specifications on the type of materials and where the materials come from, etc., was drawn up by the plumber and electrician. You cannot give their work away for someone else to tender. What you'd have to do, start all over again and bring a consultant in to draw new specifications up. You just can't give them away. I can't say to my plumber, give me your specification, I'm going to get another price for it. It's not the way it works. Morally wrong.
So just ask on that.
Councillor Watley first, and then you, Councillor Bond.
So, Jim, I completely agree with you, 100%. If somebody else has put in a load of work for free, gratis, and for nothing, then they absolutely shouldn't be giving that away. I completely agree with you. That is morally wrong. So we are in 100% agreement. But the fact remains that you've sat in a room with your plumber and your electrician and agreed a price for public money. Now, if there's anyone on this call who thinks that that is proper public procurement, then put your hand up. One councillor sat in one room with one contractor agreeing public money figures to be given away. Come on, guys, I cannot be on my own think that's wrong.
Well, for a start, we have to be careful with what's here, because as I keep saying, what's matter, and I don't think that that's what happened, that one contractor sat in one room with one councillor and agreed something between them, which was then presented as fact. But as you were directing that directly, Councillor Toogood, before I come to you, Councillor Bond, I'll give Councillor Toogood the right to reply, and then we're moving on, councillors.
What my answer to that is, Councillor Watkins, is that I sat in a room and drawn up with these contractors specifications. I've actually never seen their prices. I've never seen it. So I did not agree on the prices. We just agreed on what materials and what work they were going to do. Never agreed on prices. So I haven't got a clue what their prices are. So That's my
Okay,
answer to that
thank
one.
Councillor Tuggett. No, I think you've had a fair go, Councillor Watling. Councillor Byrne.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was on. I was prompted to ask the question on the similar point, really. I mean, and there are because what Councillor Tuggett has said is a bit concerning. I mean, there are firstly, just in terms of process, there are very strict legal limits on what an individual councillor can and can't do. But even if you put that aside, actually having a specification that specifies where the materials come from struck me as being odd, because one of the competitive advantages that the contractors bring to the table when they bid for the project is their ability to source the materials themselves. So we might specify that we want it built of brick, or we might specify that we want the roof to be made of whatever. And the bit that each of the people who are tendering for the project then use their own advantage to source the materials in the best way they can. And that's how you get a decent price. And to actually specify in advance where all the materials come from struck me as being rather odd. And the other point, more general point I wanted to make, I mean, we can argue about the procurement process until the cows come home. And I think as Stephen said earlier, if we were back where we started, we wouldn't have done it the way we have. The other way of looking at it is from the public's point of view. We're proposing to spend money on a two-room building with two cubicles or two toilets or whatever. Does £150,000 seem a fair price for what we're getting? And it's higher than I would have guessed. I don't know what other members feel about that.
It's not a point to be considered here whether it's fair. We discussed this ad nauseum in the past, various meetings, all of which are detailed, minuted, and been reproduced beforehand. So we're not getting into the procurement process, and we're not getting into the specification process again. Some people seem to be using this as an excuse to revisit the whole thing. Nothing has been put to me at this meeting which persuades me that this can be revisited or should be revisited. Nothing at all. There has been no amendment proposed, for example. Nothing. You've all had this report for some days now, hand delivered, so that you could read them in consideration of this meeting. So let's not get sidetracked. We've had the proposal. Sorry, Jim. No, sorry. We've had the proposal. It's been seconded, and I'm going to move to the vote now. And I'm going to ask for.
Can I say something, please?
If you're quick, Councillor.
Yes, it's a quick one. Right? There's a fair bit of controversy here. I call for a named vote on this, please, Mr. Clark, through the chairman. And I'd like to say a few other points as well, since I've got the screen. We have a quantity surveyor and architect which has been looking over this project. At any one time, they could have said if they thought anything was bad value. We can't control running costs or local labour because that's all specified in the project. I happen to know the biggest local contractor in Ventnor has a third of its workforce living in PO38, and most of his subcontractors come from Ryde, Newport and Cowes. So it's this local labour on a little island like this is a fantasy. So I shall support the proposal as standing, and I see no value whatsoever in going back to a re-tendering process.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. That's not what we're going to vote on in any case. As I was saying, it's been proposed and seconded, and Councillor Lucas has, as this is right, has asked for a named vote under standing orders, which I'll do. So I'll go round the table. I'll read the recommendation again, even though the light is fading them. Subject to the Isle of Wight Council agreeing to a charge of £1,000 or less a year for the hire of the four car parking spaces in the central car park required for the new public toilet, and the receipt of borrowing approval, which has not been submitted yet, I hasten to add. The Town Council is recommended to contract with its preferred contractor, DM Associates Limited, for the construction of the new public toilet. Please show, sorry, I'll go around the virtual room, whether you agree or not. Councillor Watling, would you
I disagree.
Councillor Lucas.
I'm in favour of this motion.
Councillor Milford.
I'm in favour of the motion, Chair, but I just want to ask a question. What happens if the council, the Isle of Wight Council, does not agree to a charge of £1,000 or less? Are we back to square one?
Well, we could be back to square one, but we're led to believe by the various people that we've spoken to the council. I know you've not been involved with this, Steve, and it would have been improper if you were. But we're expecting a positive response to that very soon. Councillor Toogood.
I agree with recommendation.
Councillor Macaulay.
I'm against it.
Councillor Bond.
I'm against it.
Councillor Cockett.
I'm in favour.
Councillor Logan.
Yes, with my reservations, I'm in favour.
And Councillor Backhouse Fry.
Well, I totally support us building this building. We need it, but I'm not happy about a lot of things, and possibly because I wasn't involved in most of it. So I'm going to have to abstain, basically, because I really don't know enough about this.
That's entirely right, Diane. Okay, I don't know if you've been taking a tally, Clark, but there are 5 councillors for and 3 against with 1 abstention, so that motion is carried. Now we come to the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. This might seem something that the Town Council should be discussing, but we have been approached by a member of the public about this, and I have done a little bit of research, and various councils up and down the country have come to a view on this, although you may think it's something that we don't really need to come to a view on here, but I do have a paper on it here, and I'm assuming, Clark, does everybody have a copy of the from the Isle of Wight? And I'm not going to read it through the data on members of, I wouldn't disrespect you enough to say that you don't know, you know what it all means, but I just wondered if anybody would like to contribute anything to the paper that's been presented to us by Isle of Wight CND. What they're looking for, of course, is the Isle of Wight Council's declaration of support or otherwise for the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Does anybody have anything they'd like to? Councillor Lucas.
It's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Yes, support it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree very much with Councillor Lucas. Whether we achieve much by supporting it, I'd like to see, but I think it's a very positive statement to make.
Thank you, Councillor Logan. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think we're flogging against.
Sorry, well, you started, Jim. On you go.
I was just saying, I think we're flogging against dead horse, but we should support it. Definitely.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Councillor Pocket.
I'm very, very nearly finished it now. Yes, well, I was going to jump in and support it, but I'm glad to see other councillors getting in there before me. That makes me very happy. Yeah, it is, like I say, it's a no-brainer. There's no logical reason to have these in the world, and it's costing us an eye-watering amount of money. Thousands of pounds will be leaving this household to pay for submarines that serve little or no purpose other than looking big and shiny underneath the water. So I would support this motion, and every little helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Watley?
Yeah, a list of countries since 1945 that have been overrun by their neighbours or their enemies include Kuwait, Iraq, Iran, a long time ago. The list goes on. The list of countries that have had their borders completely intact since 1945: China, Pakistan, 47 in Pakistan's case, Israel, South Africa. There is one single point of correlation there. Okay, if you have nukes, no one invades you. If you don't have nukes, you get overrun. And that's just history, I'm afraid. So not in favour, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Milford.
I just want to, I accept there's perhaps not a great deal practically we can do, but I think in principle we should support it.
Thank you very much. I know the author alludes to the local elections, but I somehow don't think on whether it's going to be a factor or a great campaigning issue in the local elections here. I may be proved wrong, but it would seem to be. But the consensus of the meeting seems to be that we indicate that the town council supports this. Am I correct? And I can therefore ask the clerk to write to the author and along those lines. I don't think there's any great any shakes amongst the public about it. I think my personal view is that I've always have been. In fact, I've been a member of CND. I'm not anymore, but I was when I was a young and impetuous. God knows how long ago that was. Youth. But, there we go. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let me go back to my agenda now, and I think we are ready for the town clerk's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, the support for Ventnor residents is continuing very well, and those of you who've seen the clerk's column this morning will know that the level of support has now passed the 1,000 milestone in terms of number of jobs completed by the volunteers, with the organisation being done by Alison, Tony and Morgan. So it's a remarkable piece of work. The town council should ensure is proud of it, and it is continuing, although at a lower level than has been the case in the past. Insurance claim members know already, which is just for the record, that our insurers have agreed to meet that claim in full. Third section is the continuing arrangements for the office, for the management of the office. And Boniface Fields lease, that's also for the record, including the thanks to the Isle of Wight Council officers who persisted with this when it might have been easier to give up. And fifthly, members will be pleased to hear that the South Wight Parishes Health and Wellbeing Forum that Tony McCarthy organises is doing really well. The last meeting, good visitors and good attendance as well. And the dates of the working groups to conclude. Thank you, Chair. I'm done.
Thanks very much, Prior. Just before I ask members to contribute, I don't think it should go unremarked that this in Boniface Field, because there was a while there that we thought that that might be in the balance because of the intransigence of certain parties associated with St Catherine's, not the head or anything like that, over the electricity supply, and it might mean something in the tens of thousands of pounds to put a supply into the field, which would have really, to use one of Councillor Watling's analogies, it would have nuked the whole process. So I'm really pleased that that came and good at no cost. And I'd just like to put on the record my grateful thanks to the head and her staff at St Catherine's for bringing this fruition, because it's one of the great successes as far as Ventnor Town Council and the Ventnor Sheds are concerned. And I think they're going to make a great contribution to the future. Going forward, they have some terrific ideas, and that together with the allotments has been two of our biggest success stories. So I'd like just that to be recorded, Clark, on behalf of my fellow councillors. Anybody else on the Clark report? Councillor Bond.
If I could just ask an item of any other business, on hanging my hat on this item, and the landslip that took place behind Walborough Road car park, do we expect the council to have any involvement, or are we expecting to have any information about it? Because it obviously potentially affects the school, I think, because it's the school's land above, and is concerning given the proximity to a number of other local properties.
Well, we don't have any other business, and I'm not a big fan of any other business. But that's a really good point you've made, Ian. Really is. I don't know if anybody has any knowledge of it. I certainly don't.
I'll ask for an update if that's acceptable, Chair.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I don't see any problem with that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's quite. It looks quite serious. I mean, if it's not clear from looking at it whether just the walls fallen down or whether the ground's moved. If the ground's moved, it might potentially raises a number of issues.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be on it, Ian. You know, if it is serious, well, if not, there should be on it. But yeah, thanks, David. If you could make and keep us in the loop about inquiries. Anything else for the clerk? Okay, if I could just say before we close, you know, as far as the procurement business and the public toilets, it has been contentious, and it's, you know, I've been really disappointed about the amount of animosity shown along the way, but I really do hope now that we can draw a line under it. As far as those who don't agree with us are concerned, the power of ejection is their own hands. The government has confirmed that the local elections will go ahead. So if people don't like the way we've been doing their business for them, then they have the power in their own hands to do something about it at that time. But I would really thank you all for your forbearance as far as this is concerned. But I can tell you, as chair, as far as I'm concerned, there's now been a line drawn under it, and the toilets are going to be built. Thank you very much indeed. See you next time.
Thank you.